Welcome back, everybody, to Joshua's Magic, to another live stream, this time on the topic of esoteric astrology. I've got a series of quotes on the subject, but I just wanted to point out before we started that I did an interview with a guy, Cliff Rabaudo, who's researched esoteric astrology for about 40 years or so. And when you're done here, consider checking that out. It was a good conversation. But let's dive into the quotes for today. Okay. So these quotes are all from the book Esoteric Astrology by Alice A. Bailey, in case you were unaware. Chapter 1, The Zodiac and the Rays. What I have to say first on this subject is entirely of a preliminary nature. I seek to lay the ground for a somewhat new approach, a far more esoteric approach to the science of astrology. Certain things, I may say, will probably be regarded by the academics and uninspired astrologer as revolutionary or as erroneous, as improbable or unprovable. As yet, however, astrology has not really proved itself to the world of thought and science, in spite of many definite demonstrable successes. I would ask all of you, therefore, who read and study this section of a treatise on the seven rays. So there's, I believe, 5 books in the treatise on the seven rays, and this is one of them. The others are Esoteric Healing, Esoteric Psychology 1 and 2, and I think the Rays and Initiations is technically part of that. Summaries: to bear in mind the above comments and to preserve a willingness to consider hypotheses and to make an effort to weigh a theory or suggestion and to test out conclusions over the course of a few years. If you can do this, there may come to you an awakening of the intuition, which will translate modern astrology into something of real moment and of significance to the world. It is intuitional astrology, which must eventually supersede what is today called astrology, thus bring about a return to the ancient knowledge, to the knowledge of the ancient science which related the constellations and our solar system, drew attention to the nature of the zodiac, and informed humanity as to the basic interrelation which govern and control the phenomenal and subjective worlds. So in this sort of preliminary quote, what he's alluding to here is that esoteric astrology is largely has a lot more to do with the intuition. Like you can plug in, this planet's here on this chart and this, thing, and this planet's on this ray and, all these other factors. But unlike regular astrology, esoteric astrology, there needs to be a degree of intuition because the outward exoteric factors don't always lead to a kind of just 2 + 2 = 4 conclusion. There needs to be something read into it. I guess it's similar to the way Hebrew is. Hebrew is missing all the vowels. So it's to some degree up to your intuition to intuit what vowels are meant to be there. So there's an interrelation there with that. And you also, when discussing an individual, and this is something we talked with Cliff about in the interview, is you have to know what point somebody is on the path of spiritual evolution or have a decent idea of it to accurately read their chart. Because some planets affect them on the lower path, whereas higher planets affect them on the higher path and so forth. And even just somebody's rising sign. How much is, if they're not spiritual at all in any real sense and they're not very evolved, then the rising sign is probably not going to affect them much at all. But if they're very spiritual, the rising sign will be very important to them because that'll be a major influence on them. And if you're liking a video, leave a like on it and consider sharing it with somebody who might find it useful. But let us move on to the next quote. And if you have any comments or questions, leave them in the chat and I'll try to get to them. The statement is frequently made that astrology is an exact science, but that is far from correct in spite of the many mathematical computations. Astrology is based curiously enough upon illusion, for as you well know, the zodiac is naught but the imaginary path of the sun through the heavens, and this as it appears from the standpoint of our totally insignificant planet. The sun is not as stated in any sign of the zodiac. It simply appears to be so as it passes between our little sphere, the Earth, and the constellations of any particular time or season. In ancient days, it was believed that the Earth was the center of the solar system, and that around it revolved the sun and all the other planets. This was the exoteric or outer knowledge and position, though not the esoteric understanding. Later, when further discoveries brought more light to the human mind, our planet was decentralized, and the truth was more clearly seen. Though much remains as yet to be discovered, and may even be as far revolutionary, yet to be discovered, and may even be of as revolutionary a nature. From certain astrological angles, a similar process of decentralization must take place, and the solar system must no longer be regarded as a point around which the zodiac revolves, through which the sun passes, or through which the sun passes in its great cycle of approximately 25,000 years. Astrologers with insight may deny that this is the commonly accepted attitude, yet for purposes of clarity and in connection with the general public, the inference is permitted and accepted by the ignorant. Upon this theory, the zodiac rests very largely what we call the great illusion. And I have you bear this in mind as you study with me the newer approaches of this greatest and oldest of sciences. Astrology is a science which must be restored to its original beauty and truth before the world can gain a true perspective and a more just and accurate perception of the divine plan, as it is expressed at this time through the wisdom of the ages. So there's a lot in this one. One is that astrology is based on kind of an illusion. The idea that the sun is in these different signs, it doesn't make a whole lot of sense in some respects. In other parts, he says that astrology works partially because people believe it works. So astrology is actually, Cliff was sort of referencing the building up of thought over the years, and these thought channels are part of why astrology works the way it does, because we believe things about Taurus and we believe Taurus is this time of the year. So whereas the energies might accurately come through at other times, because of this thought structure, there are the channels where it fits in the way we think it's going to fit. But if our perceptions were updated, it might work out in a different way. So yeah, so there's these two kind of competing things, and there's the reality of the illusion as it is, and then there's closer to the actual truth of things. And if we can update our models closer to the actual truth of things, we'll be more in sync with reality instead of adjusting reality to fit where we are. He also says that an accurate restoring astrology to its truth, which partially has to do with the intuition, will reveal the divine plan further. And so I think that has to do with what are the energies coming in from these different planets or different constellations or other solar systems. How is that affecting us at this time? And it'll reveal what the plan is. You know, if you're getting a lot of energy to love and care about people, that's the next step. But if you're getting energy that drives you further towards intelligence, that's a different step. And that's how you intelligently move forward on the spiritual path, is by understanding what the direction your soul is guiding you in, or at a very much higher point, your pure spirit or monad is guiding you. You know, what is God's will? What is God's plan? And if you understand that better, there can be a lot more harmony and integration of different things because you understand how they all fit together. But let's move on to the next quote here. And yeah, here we go. A little more expansion of the idea here. Space is an entity, and the entire vault of heaven, it has been poetically called, is the phenomenal appearance of that entity. You will note that I did not say the material appearance, but the phenomenal appearance. Speculation about the nature, the history, and the identity of that entity is useless and of no value. Some dim idea, providing analogy even when eluding specifications, might be gained if you will endeavor to think of the human family, the fourth kingdom in nature, as an entity, as constituting a single unit, expressing itself through the many diversified forms of man. You, as an entity, you as an individual are an integral part of humanity, yet you lead your own life, you react to your own impressions, you respond to exterior influences and impacts, and in your turn, you emanate influences, send forth some form of character radiation, and express some quality or qualities. You thereby, and in some measure, affect your environment and those whom you contact. Yet all the while, you remain part of a phenomenal entity to which we give the name of humanity. Now extend this idea to a greater phenomenal entity, the solar system. This entity is itself an integral part of a still greater life, which is expressing itself through 7 solar systems, of which ours is one. If you can grasp this idea, a vague picture of the great underlying esoteric truth will emerge into your consciousness. It is the life and the influence, the radiations and the emanations of this entity, and their united effect on our planetary life, the kingdoms in nature, and the unfolding human civilizations, which we shall have briefly to consider. So there's actually kind of a lot here. I mean, you can scarcely find a passage where there's not a lot of meaning in the Tibetan's writings. But basically, he's talking about heliozoism here, which is the idea that everything is alive, which is different than panpsychism, which the idea is that in panpsychism, I believe it's that everything has an immortal soul. So your chair might be alive and the form containing a certain life or energy, but your chair having an immortal soul is kind of a different thing. But in any event, the stars in the sky are the kind of appearance of this life that informs the galaxy or the solar system. And the smaller lives are part of the greater lives, hence the sort of oneness of all life and creation. And we're all sort of a part of the body of God. But depending on where your consciousness is, i.e., a human being, you're kind of cut off or not seeing the connection and not identifying with the whole. But this gets back to why astrology has any reality. Because just the way he's talking about your character radiates certain things to the people you're in contact with, and your energy and your emotion affects people around you. It's the same with the planets and solar system and different constellations. That they have these connections, and the energy streams from one source to another. And some connections are open, and other connections maybe aren't so open. But this living entity is this great body we're all a part of. And the interesting thing, he says that humanity itself is a kind of an entity or a life form, which is a really probably strange concept to most people. And I wouldn't say I fully understand it by any means, but we're all sort of part of this entity, which is humanity. And the same with animals. They're part of the animal entity, and plants are part of the plant entity, whatever that means exactly. But it gets to this law of correspondence thing, that on one level, so on another. But with all this interconnection, you see why analyzing planets or the movement of the planets and stuff has value, because the energies from the planets, not the actual physical gravity, but the energy the planets emit is reaching us in different ways and affecting us and affecting the predisposition for how things will go in the future. So moving on to the next quote. I've got this one also on Instagram. The subject is so vast that I have been faced with the problem of the best method whereby to handle it. I decided on brevity, the concise statement of facts to those of us who are working on the inner side of life, but which must rightly be only hypotheses to you, and the avoidance of detail and detailed discussion. We will endeavor to work from the universal to the particular, and from the general to the specific, but our emphasis will always be on the universal and the general, not upon the particular and the specific. It will rest with those of you who are students of astrology to make due application of the truth to the specific. It is definitely in this connection that modern astrology has gone astray. It has reversed the true and right procedure and has laid emphasis upon the specific and the particular, upon the personal horoscope and the individual destiny. It has not laid the emphasis upon the great energies and their source. These sources are ultimately responsible for the manifestation of the specific. This position and the presentation of truth must be altered. In esoteric astrology, we are therefore dealing with the life and the lives which inform the points of light within the universal life. Constellations, solar system, planets, kingdoms in nature, and microscopic man are all of them. The result of activity and the manifestation of energy of certain lives whose cycle of expression and whose infinite purpose lie outside the comprehension of the most advanced and illumined minds on our planet. So he's further developing the idea of the constellations and the stars being a sort of phenomenal appearance of great lives that are shaping the universe. And that even, the highest beings on our planet, the ascended masters and those in Shambhala, or masters of wisdom, more accurately, they can't even fully comprehend, maybe just hint at some of the purposes of these great lives. And so he talks about how astrology is very focused on the individual and personal things, but in esoteric astrology in the future, there'll be more attention given to the source of these energies and where they're coming from, because these energies are basically everything that exists is because of them, these higher energies and coming from different higher levels of these planets and solar systems. And one interesting I would point out is that in esoteric astrology, some planets and solar systems and maybe even constellations don't have physical representations, but they are there and they have a real magnetic quality and send out certain energies. And so the spiritual hierarchy, I assume, has knowledge of these. One of them is there's this supposed planet Vulcan, which is closer to the sun than Mercury and orbits the sun. But it's either not a physical planet, or it is, and it's so hard to find we still haven't seen it yet. But if it isn't a physical planet, it might be a planet that just has an etheric body and isn't visible on a physical level. But it still has an effect, as the Tibetan outlines later on in esoteric astrology. So the last quote is on Minds, because Instagram didn't have enough room for the entire quote to fit. So, you got to put it in the comments there, but on Minds and Facebook and other things, there's enough room for all of it. So the next point for each of you to grasp is the fact that the ether of space is the field in and through which the energies from the many originating sources play. We are therefore concerned with the etheric body of the planet, of the solar system, and of the 7 solar systems, of which our system is one, as well as with the general and vaster etheric body of the universe in which we are located. I employ the word located here with deliberation, and because of the inferences to which it leads. This vaster field, as well as the smaller, more localized fields, provides the medium of transmission for all the energies which play upon and through our solar system, our planetary spheres, and all forms of life upon those spheres. It forms one unbroken field of activity in constant, ceaseless motion, an eternal medium for the exchange and transmission of energies. In connection with this, and in order to more correctly to understand, it will be useful to study individual man. In this way, we can arrive at a faint comprehension of the basic and underlying truth. Students should never forget the law of analogy as an interpretive agency. Esotericism teaches, and modern science is rapidly arriving at the same conclusion, that underlying the physical body and its comprehensive and intricate system of nerves is a vital or etheric body, which is the counterpart and the true form of the outer and tangible phenomenal aspect. It is likewise the medium of transmission of force to all parts of the human frame, and the agent of the indwelling life and consciousness. It determines and conditions the physical body, for it itself is the repository and the transmitter of energies from various subjective aspects of man, and also from the environment in which man, both inner and outer, finds himself. So it's unfortunate that the etheric body hasn't been proven or demonstrated to science, despite his thinking that it was on the way. And I think there was definitely more thought about that in the earlier part of last century, but then science shifted away from that sort of thing. But the etheric body is basically just the energy body. It's the higher level of the physical plane. And higher than that is the astral or emotional body. But the etheric body receives all sorts of impacts from the higher portions of you, the higher self, the mind, the emotional nature. But it also receives energy from the planet, from the sun, from the solar system, and from things streaming into the solar system from cosmic sources. He continues, 2 other points should here be added. First, the individual etheric body is not an isolated and separate human vehicle, but is, in a peculiar sense, an integral part of the etheric body of that entity which we have called the human family. This kingdom in nature, through its etheric body, is an integral part of the planetary etheric body. The planetary etheric body is not separated off from the etheric body of all other planets, but all of them in their totality, along with the etheric body of the sun, constitute the etheric body of the solar system. This is related to the etheric bodies of the 6 solar systems, which, with ours, form a cosmic unity, and into these pour energies of forces from certain great constellations. This field of space is etheric in nature, and its vital body is composed of the totality of etheric bodies of all constellations, solar system, and planets which are found therein. Throughout this cosmic golden web, there is a constant circulation of energies and forces, and this constitutes the scientific basis of the astrological theories. Just as the forces of the planet and of the inner spiritual man, to mention only one factor among many, pour through the etheric body of the individual man on the physical plane, and condition his outer expression, activities, and qualities, so do the varying forces of the universe pour through every part of the etheric body of that entity we call space, and condition and determine the outer expression, the activities, and the qualities of every form found within the cosmic periphery. So using the law of correspondence, you can look at the microcosm of this, which is, in a sense, in your body. Your body has a number of major organs, the heart, the lungs, the brain, and these line up with the chakras. So they're kind of the outer physical expression of different chakras. And so there's the chakra system, which is the etheric system that he's laying out here. But there's also the nervous system, which is responsive in many ways to the chakra system. But if you look at your body, there's all these, you zoom in on one cell, and that might represent you, in a sense, you, a human being. But it's part of this larger body. And what goes on in the rest of the body isn't separate. If hormones are released, which could sort of correspond symbolically to higher energies, that floods the body, and it has all these effects on the different cells. Now, the cell that you're in might not be affected depending on what the hormone released is, but it might. And so that gives some of an idea of how it's seen from a higher perspective of the vastness of the galaxy and the universe. So I hope these thoughts have been enlightening to you. I'd be interested if you have any questions or thoughts. And I put something for your consideration. Cliff, in the interview I did with him, made an interesting point that the Tibetan says all you really need to know to find out why you're incarnated as a soul, you need to look at your sun sign, your ascendant or rising sign, and your moon sign. So if you don't already know those, I'd suggest consider going out in one of these astrology apps or websites and plug in your, birthday and where you were born, and you can find your those signs. And if you contemplate them, you can get an idea of why your incarnation, right? Your moon sign has to do with baggage and kind of negative traits from the past. Your sun sign has to do with your personality, and your ascendant or rising sign has to do with your soul. So those three things give you a big picture of what's going on with you, and part of the conflict of between the soul and the personality, right? Like if your soul is in your personality is in Aries, you might be very quick to action and rush forward and have a lot of energy. But let's say your soul is in Libra. Libra is, about balance and order. So there's this conflict there, and you can have an idea of where the energy is coming from, depending on that astrology. Like is it just a whim, or is it from your soul? If it's leading you to greater balance and being more even-handed, that might be from your soul in that instance. And if it's more impulsive and rushing forward and stubborn, that's probably an influence of your personality. And the goal, part of the goal of spiritual evolution is to merge those two things harmoniously, with the soul being sort of the dominant factor eventually. But I hope you all enjoyed that. Give me a like and subscribe if you're interested for more. Till next time, this is Joshua's Magic. May the force be with you.